It's 1:47 p.m. Your eyelids feel like they have weights on them. Your brain is moving through fog, and you can barely focus on the screen in front of you. You slept fine last night. You even had a salad for lunch. So why does this happen almost every single day, like clockwork? Here's the strange part. Your body may have started slowing down before you even took your first bite. There's a hidden two-part mechanism at play, one built into your internal clock, the other triggered by what's on your plate, and together they create that brutal afternoon slump. So let's answer the real question. Why does your energy crash after lunch, no matter what you eat? Your first instinct is to blame the food. Too many carbs, not enough protein. Maybe you just ate wrong. Or maybe you tell yourself it's laziness, a willpower problem you should be able to push through. But here's what doesn't add up. This happens too often, on too many different kinds of days, with too many different meals, to be a coincidence of bad choices. Something more consistent is going on underneath, something scheduled, and it starts long before lunch ever hits your plate. There are two separate systems inside you, running on their own timelines, and this afternoon they're about to collide. Deep inside your brain sits a small cluster of cells that acts like a master clock. It runs on roughly a 24-hour cycle, and it controls far more than just when you feel sleepy at night. That clock also programs a dip in alertness in the early afternoon. Scientists have measured this pattern in people who ate nothing at all during the day. The dip still showed up. It is not a reaction to food. It is a scheduled event, written into your biology, similar to the reason you feel a lull in the middle of the night, even when you are not trying to sleep. Think of it like a second, smaller version of that overnight sleepiness, just milder, and placed in the middle of your working day. Your body clock has decided that early afternoon is a natural low point for alertness. This happens whether you had a bowl of pasta or nothing at all. That is the piece most people never learn, and it is the first half of the puzzle. Here is the proof that this dip is not about food. If you skipped lunch entirely, or ate something very small and light, you would likely still feel some version of that early afternoon heaviness. Not because your blood sugar dropped from lack of eating, but because your internal clock is running its own separate program. This is why a salad, something low in calories and light on carbs, still leaves some people reaching for coffee by 2 o'clock. The salad did not fail you. Your clock was already easing off before you picked up your fork. Now add the second system into the mix, because this is where your lunch choice actually starts to matter. When you eat a meal that is heavy in refined carbohydrates, think white bread, pasta, sugary drinks, or a big pile of rice, your digestive system breaks those carbohydrates down into glucose very quickly. That glucose floods into your bloodstream in a fast, sharp wave. Your blood sugar spikes. This spike is not subtle. It is more like flipping a switch than turning a dial, and your body notices immediately. Your pancreas responds to that spike by releasing insulin, the hormone responsible for moving glucose out of your blood and into your cells for use as fuel. This is a completely normal, necessary process, but when the initial spike is large and fast, your pancreas can release more insulin than the situation actually requires. It overshoots. Instead of gently guiding your blood sugar back to a stable level, it pulls it down aggressively, sometimes below where it started. This is the biological engine behind that specific feeling. Roughly 45 to 60 minutes after eating, when you go from fine to suddenly foggy, heavy, almost drowsy in a way that feels different from ordinary tiredness. That is not randomness. That is insulin finishing its overcorrection. At the same time, a third detail is working quietly in the background. After you eat any meal, not just a carb-heavy one, your body redirects blood flow toward your digestive system. Digesting food takes energy and resources, so your gut becomes a temporary priority. Blood that might otherwise be circulating to support alertness in your brain gets rerouted to support digestion instead. This is part of why brain fog tends to show up specifically after eating rather than before it. You were sharp right before lunch. 30 minutes later, thinking feels like wading through water. Your gut essentially borrowed some of the resources your brain was using. Now picture these two timelines side by side. Your circadian dip begins its natural descent in early afternoon, lowering your baseline alertness regardless of what is on your plate. Then, layered directly on top of that same window of time, the insulin overshoot from a carb-heavy lunch drags your blood sugar down hard, right as your body flow is also shifting toward digestion. These are not two separate small dips happening on two separate days. They are two dips happening in the exact same hour, stacking directly on top of each other. That stacking is why the crash feels so much heavier than either system would create on its own. It is not one mild slope. It is two slopes combined into one steep drop. This also explains why a lighter lunch, like a salad, still produces some sleepiness, just a gentler version. Without a big carbohydrate spike, there is no dramatic insulin overshoot to add on top. The circadian dip is still there, doing its scheduled work, but it is acting mostly alone. The heaviness you feel on a salad day is real, but it tends to be milder and slower to build, because only one system is pulling you down instead of two. A carb-heavy lunch does not create the afternoon dip from nothing. The dip was always going to happen. What that kind of lunch does is amplify it, turning a mild, manageable slowdown into something closer to hitting a wall. The sandwich did not cause your slump. It decided how steep that slump would feel once your body clock had already started winding down. Here's the good news buried inside all of this. That sharp crash, the one that hits 45 to 60 minutes after eating, has a built-in off switch. Insulin does its job, blood sugar settles back into a normal range, and the sharpest edge of that feeling passes on its own. You are not stuck there. The crash is a temporary event, a wave moving through your system, not a permanent setting. Which means there is room to influence how big that wave gets before it ever forms. Here is where you actually have some leverage. The order you eat your food changes how fast that wave builds. If you eat your protein and your fiber first, think the chicken, the beans, the vegetables, before you touch the bread or the rice, you slow down how quickly glucose enters your bloodstream. Protein and fiber act almost like a gate, controlling the pace at which the carbohydrates that follow get absorbed. Same meal, same total calories, same sandwich even, just a different order. That single change can turn a sharp spike into a gentler slope, which means insulin has less reason to overshoot on the way back down. Then there is the second layer, the one connected to your body clock rather than your plate. After you eat, instead of sitting back down right away, take a short walk outside for about 10 minutes. This does two things at once. Light exposure during the day helps support your circadian rhythm, the same internal clock responsible for that early afternoon dip in the first place. And gentle movement helps your muscles pull in some of that circulating glucose, working alongside insulin instead of leaving it to do all the work alone. You are essentially meeting both systems where they live. One small action, touching both halves of the mechanism. None of this means your body is broken, or that you are lacking discipline, or that your salad choices have been failing you all along. Two separate systems, your internal clock and your blood sugar response, are simply doing exactly what they are designed to do, at the exact same time of day. One lowers your alertness on schedule, the other responds to whatever you feed it. That collision is not dysfunction, it is coordination, just poorly timed for a workday. Try this at your next lunch, and treat it like a small experiment, rather than a rule. Eat the protein and fiber first, save the carbs for the last few bites, then step outside for 10 minutes once you're done. Over the next week, pay attention to something specific. Notice whether the eyelid heaviness around 1 or 2 p.m. still shows up, because that part is scheduled and likely will. But also notice whether the sharper, heavier crash, the one that used to hit 45 minutes later like a wall, feels softer, less like falling off a cliff, more like drifting down a gentle hill. That contrast is the whole mechanism, visible in real time, inside your own day. The mild dip is your clock, the sharp drop is your blood sugar. Watching one soften while the other stays roughly the same is how you feel the two systems separate from each other, instead of blurring together into one confusing wall of fatigue. So next time your eyelids get heavy around 2 p.m., you'll know exactly what's happening. Your body clock already had this dip scheduled, long before lunch ever hit your plate. Your lunch never created that slowdown. It only decided how steep the drop would feel once that slowdown arrived. And now you know the one small tweak, protein and fiber first, carbs last, then a short walk in the light, that can flatten that curve just enough to get your afternoon back.